I think this is my seventh or eighth visit here. My very first visit was back in 1991. The last time I was here is just a few months ago, back in April, when I was part of the Kalmyk delegation with Kirsan Elumjuno. I was here, part of the Kalmyk delegation. So that was my last time here. So I think this time, I think it's the seventh time.
You said you came 1991 first. Is a reincarnated Tilopa. And then you visited Zafan. Did you find any place very close to you or familiar to you?
You know, that was a very interesting visit back in 1991. There's many reasons for that. Because, first of all, I was born in the U.S. And growing up, my parents are originally from Kalmykia, which is part of Russia now. But the Kalmyk people are native Oirat people, which come from Western Mongolia. My parents immigrated to the United States in the early 50s after the Second World War. After the Kalmyk people went through a very hardship. So growing up in America, even my brother and sisters, we were always told that we were Mongolians.
So how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 5 brothers and 3 sisters. I'm the youngest one, so I'm the 9th one. So growing up in the U.S., our parents always told us we are Mongolians, and it was never stressed that we were Kalmyks. And the reason that it was is because our parents and grandparents went through so much hardship, and they never wanted to talk about it. They never wanted to speak about the hardship that they went through. We never knew about it until later on, many years afterwards. So, and I think in their belief, there was no information about what existed of their relatives back in Russia. Were they still alive? Did Kalmykia even exist even to this day? So I think the belief was it was no longer there. You know, even if we call ourselves Kalmyks, what's the use? Nobody knows. It doesn't exist anymore. So I think the most easiest way was to say, you know, we're Mongolians. Because Mongolia as a nation, it was a lot easier for people to understand where it was. So for me, when I first came in 1991, I had no idea about Kalmykia. Just very vague information about that. So when I first came to Kalmykia, expecting that Kalmykia is within Mongolia. And it wasn't. So to me, that was a very eye-opening experience for me. And from here, from Mongolia, I went to Ulaanbaatar. Ulan. I went to Ulan, which borders with Mongolia. Then you think, oh, okay, maybe Kalmykia is just like Buryat, which borders Mongolia as well. So I met a few Kalmyks in Ulan, and we flew together to Kalmykia. And that was the very first time I physically saw on a map where Kalmykia was and how far it was. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me. You know, during that time I went to Zafan, and I met many old people who have met the previous Hototo. And they told me so many stories about the previous Telo Hototo. There was many older people who have met him in their younger ages and their experiences with him. So it was definitely a very spiritual, educational, and culture experience for me at that time.
What did you feel?
I think it's more of a culture shock, you know, because we grew up with very limited information. I remember back in the late 1980s when I was studying in a Tibetan monastery in India. I just happened to be in New Delhi, the capital city of India, and I wanted to learn more about Mongolia. I went to the Mongolian embassy, and I asked for information, material, brochures, films, books, whatever they could provide so that I can learn more about it. To my surprise, I was kicked out of the Mongolian embassy. Only because I was a Kalmyk. I didn't have clear information. I walked in the door and I said, I'm born in America, I'm a Mongolian, but, you know, some Kalmyk, you know, I don't know where it is, but what the history is. So therefore, I want to learn more about Mongolian history and get some more information. And I think about it, today it was understandable. That was a communist period. It was a communist government.
What year was that?
And I think it was 89. 89. And the person that met me said, "You have no right to be here. You're not a Mongolian. You have no right to be in this embassy. I have the authority to throw you out. And I'm asking you to leave." So that was very kind of a shock for me. And because of that rejection, I think that interest grew even more, And that's why in 1991 I made the first visit.
So how did you get a visa?
How did I get a visa? Well, in 1991, by that time, Mongolia was already a democratic country. And so I got that was very easy. So the doors
changed somehow.
Right, the doors to Mongolia started to open. So that's how I got my visa. And that was at that time it was a different people working at the embassy at that time. But again, it was a very educational experience for me. A lot of soul searching, your root searching, and things like that.
When your fifth Tilopa when he was 5, it was protect from 5 years he started, and then he was a really biggest leader of Buddhism of Mongolia. And so, what do you feel about this coming to Mongolia as a Hotakt?
You know what? I definitely feel a connection. It's very hard for me to describe it.
It's a silly question again, but do you recognize like mountains or gears or some people or some I'm from ordinary
back in 91 I went to Shilostai and in Zapanamik, and for some reason I felt like I've been there. I recognized. And I broke down in tears, and I cried. And somebody asked me, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "This is not the Shulasta I remember. These houses that never existed. These are Soviet-built houses. This is not the houses that we used to live in." And I remember that clearly. And that just came out. I wasn't making that up, or I wasn't, thinking of way to impress anybody. I just broke down in tears, and I just felt that presence of the previous Telo Tulku being there, and not remembering any of these houses. So that was a very special moment. I don't try to dwell on too much and say, "Oh, do I remember this mountain? Let's try to do this." Or I can't remember these people, or what, where, how big this lake used to be, or where it was or what existed. I try not to dwell on that because, these are things of the past. He definitely...
But you feel connections.
I definitely feel a connection, and let me tell you why. The previous Telo Tulku, towards the end of his life, towards the end of his life, he spent the last remaining years among the Kalmykia community in America. And he passed away in New York City. Now, that was back in '65.